Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Rent Free with Mackenzie Davis. This is episode 7, which is crazy. Very excited to be back with you guys this week. We have a good episode, something that I feel very passionate about, which is social media and using it to your advantage in the real estate space. So hopefully you guys will find that interesting. I have a lot of things that have been living rent-free in my head to get into before we get to that content. So I will just jump right into that. This week is Halloween, however you partake. So there's a lot of stuff going on in that realm of things. I told you guys last week that I was having a large Halloween party this past weekend, and I did in fact have that Halloween party. It was amazing. I ended up planning like such a cool murder mystery / scavenger hunt where basically we had like 6 stations that were, think like escape room, where they had to find where the hint was. So we gave them the initial hint, and then they had to solve all the clues in order to find like the answer. And in order to get immunity from the murderer, they had to solve it correctly, which was really hard to do for a lot of them. And like I was using like my realtor lock boxes to like lock shit away. Like we were hiding things. Like it was really fun. And then there was a second component where we had a murderer that nobody knew who that was, and they were doing a separate list of tasks while trying to blend in with the rest of the group, doing the scavenger hunt. And for every task that they completed, they were able to murder one person who wasn't immune. So it was just really fun because like everyone was like, how is the murderer murdering people? Like it was just really great. So if you were curious, party went awesome, really fun. I love to be a host. So already thinking about what we're going to do for Christmas and looking forward to that one. Other things that have been living rent-free in my mind these past few weeks, or past week, I guess I should say, are real estate related. So I have been kind of doing a lot more educational stuff lately. Like I've been going to a lot more classes, and it definitely has to do with the fact that I joined a team. Like there's been a lot more opportunity for me to, like, in fact, like right after I record this episode, I'm going to part of Ryan Serhant's mentorship program. He has like all these classes, so I'm going to one of those that's virtual. And so I always am like at these things that I am learning so much from. And so I'm giving you guys little tidbits that like stood out to me. The first thing being that I went to actually ACAR, which is the Anne Arundel County Association of Realtors, which is the part that I'm a part of, the board that I'm a part of, I should say. They had a panel, which my team lead sat on last week. So we all went, and it was on buyer agency commissions, which of course, if you have been keeping up with the NAR settlement, or if you work in real estate, you know that over the summer, there was a huge change in our real estate space because there is no longer a requirement for the seller to pay the buyer agency commission. Now in Maryland, we never had that as a requirement. So there was always the option that the seller wasn't going to pay. It was pretty uncommon for that to happen. So we, of course, are still seeing the changes reflected. And now it's not listed in the MLS. So if you're going to show a property, you're having to decide whether or not you're going to ask the other agent if they're offering that compensation. There was a lot of talk on the panel about some people not wanting to ask, and some people, deciding that if their client was the one who decided like, hey, I don't want to see any houses where they're not offering you compensation. 1, because I can't afford that. Or maybe 2, because we don't want to work with a seller that's not gonna, do that for you guys. Maybe 3, they could be selling their house and offering their buyer's agent commission. So they're like, we want to buy a house where they're offering the commission. It's like a give and a take. There was a lot of really interesting conversation about that. But the most interesting thing to me that I took away from that, I mean, maybe not the most interesting, but just something that I will be implementing and changing, because to be honest, for the most part, I haven't and won't be changing much about the way that I practice business in response to the NAR settlement, because for the most part, nothing really is changing. And we're finding that most sellers are offering the compensation because It's just the way the business has worked for so long. But they were talking a lot about the word commission in general and how it's outdated and how it carries this negative connotation and how people are stopping using the word commission, because when you go to sit down with a buyer and you pull out this piece of paper, the buyer agency agreement, and you say, hey, I need you to sign this agreement, which is guaranteeing my commission. Commission is like this dirty word, right? Like you think of car salesmen, you think of realtors, you think of these people, and it sounds very selfish. At least like when we were talking about it on this panel, that's how it was coming off. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? Like it is like whenever I explain something to a client, I'm always like, oh yeah, and the commission, it feels kind of like a secret. And what other people have started saying is my compensation, which really implies, okay, I'm providing you a service and I want to be compensated, which I deserve to be compensated for because I am providing you a service. You know, using a realtor is what some people would consider a luxury, of course. I mean, anybody could go out there and sell a house on their own. Of course, it would be challenging and you would have to get a lawyer and, you know, a title attorney and whatever you would need to do and figure out all of that on your own. So using a realtor is a luxury in which you deserve to be compensated. So they were kind of just going on and on about how using the word fee or compensation, fee I thought was kind of in the same realm as commission, but anyway, compensation I liked a lot better. So definitely we'll be implementing that a bit more. And just kind of wanted to reiterate that I was sitting amongst 4 of the best realtors in my county, and they were reiterating time and time again that they have not had a single issue since the settlement went into effect, and that they have not had a buyer yet say, hey, I'm not signing this agreement, and that their buyers actually want them to be compensated. Surprise, surprise, which is what I've been saying on TikTok since the beginning. If your clients trust you and want to work with you, they don't want you to not get paid, right? Like they want that to work for you, especially if that's the new norm in this business. It's not like they're going to be like, oh, screw you. Like, of course it sucks for them if they have to come out of pocket more, but that doesn't mean that they're just not going to pay you, you know? So that was the nugget I got from that. And then the other thing as well that I learned about, which I'm really glad that I did, because when I bought my house back in April, you sit down at the closing table, and apologies if you guys are like, yeah, we know this. I didn't, and I should have because I'm a realtor, but there's a lot of information. And like I tell you guys all the time, it's like you learn along the way with a lot of this stuff, but in Maryland, there's something called the homestead tax credit. And when you buy a house, they tell you at the closing table all about it, and they tell you to file for it. And I knew I was going to file for it, but I didn't know what it was. Okay. And I always tell my clients to file for it. I'm always like, oh, it's a credit. It's a tax credit. Just file for it after you've lived there for a year. When when you're coming up on your 1-year anniversary, like file for it. So I've been, like preaching this for years, but I finally learned that in Maryland, and I keep saying in Maryland because I'm not sure what this is like in other states, but you can actually, when you file for this credit, it stops the state from taxing you, increasing your taxes by more than 10% every single year. That's huge. That is huge. And you can file it at any time. So like, even if you've lived there 20 years, you could file it right now. And of course, it would only start now. So like, if you've been increased in taxes by like 25%, then sorry. But I think it's so fascinating that that is like something that is not just within legislation already. I don't know. So if you live in Maryland and you haven't done that, definitely do it. And if you live in other states, look into see if you have other credits, because I'm always trying to help people save money and just like also know their rights. I feel like that's the right way to say that. Like, you own a house, you should know that you have the ability to like prevent the government from taxing you more. There, I said it. Okay. So those are like the little nugget things that I kind of wanted to share with you guys this week, as like what's been living rent free in my mind. Other personal things going on. I'm actually starting a new job on Monday. I haven't told you guys about this yet because It's been a lot for me. And for some reason, I just haven't thought to share it with you guys. Now, you guys know I have a master's, it's sitting right behind me, a master's degree in clinical psychology and a bachelor's in psychology. And my intention was always to be a therapist and work in private practice. And I did my internship for an entire year at a private practice, and I loved them. I have known the owners of this company forever. I used to nanny for one of the owners. And I interned there, and the entire year that I interned there, I was like forcing myself to be like, okay, once you are better at this, like you're more confident at this, like you will like it more. You'll like it more. And I never liked it more. And even like, if you guys could see my bookshelf, like down here, like I really tried to lean into OCD work. Like I have OCD, so like it's really fascinating to me, but I am so educated on it because I was like, let me lean into this niche. Like, let me really work hard at this and like try to be super educated. And I am on the topic. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a bad therapist. I don't think that I am, but it was like torture for me. Like I was dreading every single day to the point where I think I was depressed for the first time ever in my life. Like I have never been depressed, and I didn't think I even knew what that felt like until this past summer. And it just wasn't for me, which is crazy because this is what I've wanted to do my whole life. So yeah, so this past summer was just like a really weird time for me, trying to figure out what I want to do next, like what my life would be like. And I toyed with the idea of going full-time into real estate, but I never like know about that because I've never done real estate full-time. And then I joined a team. And so now I'm like, I could do it full-time. It's just like a lot of back and forth, but I ended up taking on a position that's still very clinical based, still using my degree. And it's actually working as a rehabilitation specialist. So basically, if you look at like a therapist, instead of working in a private practice, I'm working at an outpatient clinic, but I will be overseeing the therapists, which is more behind the scenes. And to me, I think that's something I'm going to like so much better. Like as outgoing of a person I am, I can't explain the pressure that you feel when working one-on-one with someone as a therapist. And maybe that was just me, but like the weight that I took on of other people's problems and the pressure that I felt of having to have the solutions and things like that was intense. And so I'm very excited to have a more behind the scenes role. It's a hybrid role, so I'll be working from home a lot. It is right down the street from me. So that starts next Monday. I'm not sure what that means for everything else in my life, but you guys know, like I've said a bajillion times, if I've made real estate work through undergrad, grad school, being a therapist, all the things, I will make it work. It will be fine. But that being said, those are my updates, y'all. And I'm sorry that this portion of the episode was a little bit longer today, but the content of this episode, without further ado, is talking about social media. My favorite thing to talk about. I love content creation. I love social media, and the power of it is insane. I think that is something that we know of, right? Like we as people know that it's powerful, and I think that it's leveraged quite a bit, but really I think that more people need to hop on the train. Like not even just for how it can leverage your business, but then the potential of adding streams of income or sources of revenue to your life is also insane. And I mean that from a place of like, that wasn't my intention, but I am now in a place where like I make more money from social media than I do from real estate, which is crazy because I started real estate and was dumbfounded with how much money I was making from real estate. And now I make content talking about that and make more money talking about that than you know what I'm saying? Like it's paradoxical in a way, but it's powerful. And that's the word I keep coming back to because there's really endless possibilities in the way that you want to use it to your advantage. how little or how much you want to use it and which platforms that you want to dive into. Of course, most of you guys that are here know that TikTok is like my jam. It just comes naturally to me, I guess. I have always kind of been in the video space. Like, if you've heard me talk before, like in middle school, I had a YouTube channel and I loved making videos, and I still do, and I edit and I do things like that. And so clearly TikTok is very similar to that. But I dive into the Instagram world too, and I love a good aesthetic and curating my feed and all of that. So I will say it's like a passion of mine that I enjoy. And I start there because I think it's important to have that passion for it and enjoy it as well. Like, I don't want to lead you down this path if you're not interested in it. And I think that's really important because there's tons of other ways to like market for your business. If this is not for you, it's not for you, and that's totally okay. Like, I have friends who, for example, like, I doubt he's listening, my friend Andy, and you guys might follow him on social media too. He's a New York realtor. And when I first started following him on social media, and I still think he does this, but he's like a door knocking guy. Like, that is his jam, right? And he does make videos here and there, but like, his bread and butter is door knocking. Me personally, I could not be caught dead door knocking. And it's not like, oh, I'm like ashamed to door knock. It's just not my cup of tea. Also, to be fair, like, I'm a woman who lives in Baltimore City, so like, I'm not going to be door knocking in the city. But like, for him, maybe that interpersonal interaction is like his cup of tea. But like, that's what I'm trying to speak to. It's like, don't feel like because this worked for me, it's like the plan, the blueprint. Like, but I will say this is what worked for me. So there's kind of my little disclaimer there. But without further ado, I mean, we can talk about the specifics of it, the things that really work. And I have other kind of tips woven in here of things that I've done and tried that don't have to do with TikTok too, just because I want to kind of be broader in the scope of things. But I have a list of kind of tips that I wrote down here. And actually the first one has nothing to do with TikTok. So I think we should start there maybe. And it has to do with CRM. So I talked about CRMs in one of my last TikTok videos, and they're quite honestly something I'm very new to. So I'm not pretending like I'm like preaching to the choir here because I don't know much about them. But I've heard this tip thrown around a lot that says the best CRM is the one that you use, which means, and let me go back a step. A CRM is a customer or client relationship management software. So common ones are like KV Core, which is now Bold Trail, Follow Up Boss. There's a bunch of them. I can't think of them off the top of my head right now, but basically it's any sort of system where you can input like your buyers' names, their emails, their phone numbers, and you can keep track of the last time you communicated with them, like what status they're at, like, oh, are they writing offers? Are they kind of just in your sphere of influence? Like, it's really helpful so that as you build your business, you're not like, oh shit, when was the last time I talked to them? Or like, who was that? And honestly, for years in this business, I never did that. I never kept up with that. And partially, I think it was like the part-timeness of my brain. Like, I would go back to school and then I like wasn't in the real estate space. So I wasn't like following up. And then I'd come home and I'd like boom, 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 sell a few houses, and then I'd be back to school. So it was kind of off. But then I was just slacking over the past few months because, I mean, I've been graduated grad school now since May, so I should have been kind of on this for a while now. But needless to say, I have been on my CRM game lately. I use Bold Trail, which is free at my brokerage, and I have officially like put all my clients in there. And what's really great about these softwares is that they offer something called Smart Campaigns. And what I've been doing with these Smart Campaigns, and you can set them up however you want. I honestly haven't figured out all the features, but they offer really cool stuff where like if you input a new contact, you can set up a Smart Campaign so that any new contact you input is sent XYZ. So for example, something I'm thinking of putting together is an email Smart Campaign so that any new client I get is sent my buyer like preparation guide. So I'll put together a guide that'll be like, oh, here's the steps for home buying. Here's this process. And it'll be like a PDF put together really nicely so that like anybody who is clearly flagged as a new home buyer is getting like my resources immediately. And, there's lots of really creative ways to do that. Or maybe on someone's home anniversary, you automatically send out those things. So it's like you are taking the pressure off you to remember to do those things. And the CRM is automatically doing them and then keeping your name in your client's mind without having you have to like do it. Or you can set up alerts to remind yourself to do it, so you don't have to do it automated. But that is not quite social media. But if you're counting like email, messaging, like all of that jazz, then yes. So that's, I guess, where I'll leave that one. I think I'm still learning about it, and I'll continue to tell you guys if I learn anything cool about CRMs, but that's a really, really great one, and just wanted to share that with you. The second thing, which is broad, and it can be broad, it can be for any aspect of social media or marketing in general, is providing value. And you might hear this and like roll your eyes, because I feel like I've probably heard this a billion times in my career as well. But genuinely though, like, what are you providing? And I have the perfect example of this. So if you go on Facebook, like I'm in a ton of Facebook groups. I'm, first of all, nosy. Second of all, involved in my community. Like I've lived in the same area my whole life. So I'm in like a bajillion Facebook pages. And I'm in this one called Annapolis Moms, which is just like for Annapolis, where people be posting anything. And if anybody posts something that hints at the idea of moving, like potentially like, oh, looking for a moving company, looking for recommendations for a stager, like it could be so far removed from the idea of like actually moving, like you name it. And immediately hundreds of comments. Hi, I'm a realtor. Call me. Like, hi, so cold, so unempathetic, unhelpful. And needless to say, they are not answering the question. They're looking for an interior designer, and you just said, hey, I'm a realtor. Cool. Guess who they're not using as a realtor? First of all, they probably already have a realtor. Second, that's not helpful. And so when I talk about providing value, and when I see these posts, I do this every time. I have like a list of people that I refer in those related fields. So say it's an interior designer. I'll go to my list. I'll be like, oh, you know what? I love this person, blah, blah, blah. So I will say, oh my gosh, gotta refer so-and-so. They do such terrific work and have helped so many of my clients. So there's the value. You needed that answer. I got you, girl. Then I'll make a little sub paragraph and I'll be like, by the way, I'm also a local realtor, lived in the area for 23 years. If you need any help, just let me know. Call, text, email is totally fine. And then I'll put my number. I'm not DMing them nonstop. I'm not, being obnoxious. And I'm certainly not ignoring their question and leaving my info. So that to me is an example of like why I reiterate the providing value piece, because like, come on, like you can't just like, there's a billion realtors in this world. If you're not providing value, then you are just a dime a dozen. Like people don't want you just because you say, hey, I have my real estate license. So does Billy Bob Joe and everybody in his family. So does everyone else. Like what are you doing that's different? And that is why I think like my content on TikTok stands out in a lot of ways, because even though I make content for new realtors, like, I mean, I do of course make content for home buyers and sellers and things like that too. But the majority of my content centers around new realtors and making you a successful realtor, is because all of the content that I make highlights that I know how to do my job well. Because I break down every step of the process. I am showing home buyers and sellers, hey, like this is my job and I know how to do it. And that was not my plan, by the way, from the beginning. It just worked out really well. But like, it's very nice in the way that it works out, because I provide value to new realtors. It helps them in this way, but I also provide value to home buyers and sellers because I am helping them in a way that really gets their job, their needs out of the way. So it's like a double-edged sword. And And so providing value is like a soapbox I could stand on all fucking day, but I won't. And I just want to leave that there. Like whatever way you can find to provide value, do it. It doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter what it is. It just matters that you are not standing there screaming that you're a realtor at everyone that walks by. And the second part of that is the working with your niche part. And I think those things go hand in hand because like I said this in a video the other day and someone commented like, can you talk more about what niches are in real estate? And I was like, that's a great question. And also I think that not enough people understand how nuanced pieces of real estate can be because like when you start in real estate, it's like, okay, I'm selling houses. But in actuality, like, okay, you can work with veterans, you can work with first-time home buyers, you can work with commercial real estate, you can work with new construction, you can work with investors, you can do just auctions, you can do like there's tons of different ways that you can be involved in real estate and all just by having a real estate license. And so each little avenue that you can take, you probably are going to want to take different steps to be like the best in that field, right? And like if I want to work with first-time home buyers, I'm going to want to get in front of audiences that are more comprised of first-time home buyers, which means that like I'm going to be talking to younger people more so. I'm going to be getting in front of millennials and people who are graduating college or maybe even high school students. And like, that's the kind of realm that I will be most focused on. And like, if on the flip side, if I want to focus on like veterans, okay, then I'm going to be working with like army people. Like I don't know much about that world. So sorry if I'm like saying things wrong, but like maybe I would like work with the reserves or like go on base or like do webinars or like whatever that is, you know, you want to kind of cater your marketing or whatever towards that area and highlight things that would reflect well with them. So provide value to your niche. And I'm not saying you can't work with everybody. You totally can. It's just that, you know, when you first start, it's really hard to tackle every single niche and be good at everything because there is so much to know. So it's easier to kind of like pick something and get really good at one thing. Wrote 3 things down that I feel like kind of swirl together and all kind of like work together and mean like similar things. But I'll explain them separately and then explain how I think they intersect. So would you watch it is something that I stand by because somehow people will watch content for hours, right? Like you go on TikTok at night and you scroll for hours and somehow, and I've learned this over the years, they don't understand what makes it work, right? Like you will watch content and your For You page is catered to the content that you like to watch. And there are certain things about each of those videos that makes you want to watch it. Yet when you go to make content, it is so hard sometimes for people to then replicate those little aspects of the video that made them stick around to watch the video. And if it wasn't clear, like what I mean by that is like, I will so often see like someone who maybe doesn't have followers or it's like their first video, like start from a weird angle, or they'll start and there's like 3 seconds where they're not saying anything, or, you know, just like little things. Okay. And nothing wrong. Like obviously people need to learn, right? But like think about it on the flip. If you got showed that video, are you watching that? Are you watching someone fiddle with their camera for 3 seconds? No, you're scrolling. You're scrolling so quick because in this day and age, we are not here. Like we don't have attention spans anymore. We literally scroll so fast. And so you have to have that mindset when you're creating content too. And that's why like hooks, especially when we're doing short form content, like if you're on YouTube or something, this doesn't matter quite as much because people aren't like scrolling. But if you are on Reels, if you're on YouTube, if you're even on Instagram, it's like, you need to make sure that that first 3 seconds, that first 5 seconds is attention grabbing. What are you saying that is going to make that person want to say, oh yeah, what is she going to say next? What are they going to tell me? Like, what more does she have to say? Right. And so that's like that first piece where I'm like, would you want to watch it? And I teach this in a class that I teach at my brokerage, and I say this all the time. And I think this is the part where people are always like, oh, it's a really great point. I'm like, yeah. Like, think about what you would want to watch. And so The second piece of that, which is part of why I said it all goes together, is like the aesthetics of it all matter. And I'm not saying that you need to match everything and have everything perfect and, stick to your aesthetic 24/7. I know I don't all the time, and it really like isn't the end all be all. But I will say that when you, and again, think about it, how you consume content, right? Like if you are on TikTok and you see somebody's video and you go to click on their page, kind of within the first few seconds of seeing their page, you're going to know if it's a content creator that you're going to want to follow or not follow. And that's typically based off of the aesthetic of their page. What does their bio look like? What's in their bio? Do they have everything clearly laid out? Do they have playlists for you to watch? Do they have pinned videos? Is their profile picture like aesthetic? Do they have like a theme? Like do they have their covers on their TikTok videos laid out nicely? Like there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle which are intentional, but maybe don't even seem that intentional, that really get behind that like front layer of your consciousness when you're consuming content, where like if you go to someone's Instagram profile, like they're likely being intentional about the way that they're posting and making it so that it fits their aesthetic or their vibe or whatever it is, so that it's appealing to the people that they want it to be appealing to. And it's the same thing with TikTok and social media. And I don't say that in a way to make you like feel the pressure of like having the perfect feed or whatever, because it's not that serious. But I will say, if you can just flip it back to yourself and think like, what is it that I enjoy to see when I like open a page? Or what is it that I like to follow? You can kind of model your own pages after those things. So that's something else that I suggest when you're talking about building up your foundational pages that represent who you are, especially if you're looking for growth on your social media platforms. And then the third piece that I said was sort of intertwined with this is that trends matter. And again, I'm speaking from a place of like virality and wanting social media to be your lead source for real estate. So trends are huge because they push your content. And we know that all social media platforms work off of algorithms, TikTok being the number one source of like algorithm use, right? Like they are the ones that are pushing content more than anybody else. Like if you post something on Instagram, it's not likely it's really going to be seen by other people that are not following you. But if you post on TikTok, I mean, anybody could see that depending on how you post and what you're posting. So if you're posting a video with either a trending sound or something that is just trending in general, it's way more likely to be seen by other people. And if you pay attention to the trends and kind of stay on top of that stuff, you're just making yourself way more likely to have your videos seen, which it's kind of like a no-brainer. Like if you can adapt your content and figure out a way to make your niche apply to a trend, I mean, you're golden. I did like 4 videos a day when I was in college, and I would do every single trend. And I swear, like I don't have the stamina to do stuff like that anymore, but that is where so much of my following came from, because I was so consistent with trends, and it really pushed my content to see a lot of people that I don't know that would have seen my content otherwise. All right, getting down to the last 2 points here. Work smarter, not harder. I don't think this is rocket science. I mean, maybe for some people it is. And like I said, I'm privileged that I was born in 2001. Okay. Like I grew up on this stuff and I do understand it maybe at a level that like my parents don't, but you can make a TikTok and post it on your reels. You can, make an Instagram post and then share it to your story. You can link your Facebook so that when you post on Instagram, it posts to your Facebook as well. Like we don't need to be reinventing the wheel here in order to have consistency on social media. And so I think that if you can figure that out in a way that works for you, it will be really helpful. Because there's no reason that we need to be like taking hours to post on social media every single day, especially when we're already so busy. And the last thing that I will say is social media is a really cool thing because you don't need to have business in order to use it. And what I mean by this is exactly what I did. When I was in college and I had just gotten my license, I went back to school. I didn't have any business. I wasn't doing real estate. I was building my social media, and I was just on Instagram at this point, but I was posting 3 times a week. I was just trying to have something to show for myself. I wanted my first client, who I would hopefully have in the near future, which I luckily ended up having. I wanted, if they looked me up, which, by the way, your clients will look you up. I promise they will. Especially if you're on TikTok, they're just going to find you. I promise. None of my clients these days don't find me on TikTok. But let me just say that it's a great way to show, hey, I have like knowledge about the market. I have knowledge about real estate. And also, oh wait, this girl's been posting for a year now, and that's great. So like, even if you don't sell a house for a year, you have this internet footprint, if you will, that shows that you know stuff, you know something. And that was really my intention with starting my social media in the first place. And well, I did get lucky with like my first viral TikTok post, which kind of blew everything up. I think that even if you're not going for virality, it's a really great staple to just have for your reputation and for, you know, building a foundation for yourself. All right, y'all. I feel like that was a lot. And I hope that you guys enjoyed all of that info and hopefully it made sense. Sometimes I get yapping and I'm like, I don't know if any of that even made sense. No questions this week on the form. I did want to let you guys know that I made one of those chats on Instagram. I don't know what they're called. It's like a chat where you guys can join. I think it's called a broadcast channel or something. It's completely like free, but you can join. And I've been sending a lot of messages and responding to questions in there because quite honestly, I cannot keep up with the DMs and I feel terrible about it. I don't know why it like weighs on me so hard, but I really feel bad that I cannot respond to you individually. So if you ever want to ask a question, either put it on the questions form for the podcast or send it in the broadcast channel. And those are the two places that I check regularly. So hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions. There's also a lot of other great stuff I've been sending in the broadcast channel, especially like this. Today I asked for podcast ideas and this was one of them. So definitely just keep checking there if you want to join something like that. And I love you guys a lot. I hope you have a good Halloween. It's tomorrow. So I hope you had a good Halloween because you guys will be seeing this on Friday. I love you very much. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.